This video is an excerpt from a larger work I'll be posting in the coming weeks with Saturn Rooster or Dane Abraham Quirk. It follows the concept of the Genius Loci, the spirit of place, and ties in related coordinates of the Earth grid with places of incorporation and places of remembrance, remembering or reincorporation. Edward Cook, the barrister responsible for much of corporate law that we still operate under today, initially argued that a corporation must have both a name and a place, but he changed his legal view over time, insinuating that a corporation in name only, although a legal fiction, was enough for the law to recognize it. In 1594, just 6 years after Cook's first legal argument in Marriott versus Pascal, pitting name against place, a play was written that cleverly portrayed the tension between name and place. That play was Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, a variation on the chemical romance, or, in this case, the ecclesiastical rather than chemical act of incorporation, as Friar Lawrence states as he prepares to marry the two lovers. Come, come with me, and we will make short work, for by your leaves you shall not stay alone, till Holy Church incorporate two in one. Friar Lawrence turns out to be an alchemist as well, one who disincorporates, as shown in his use of distillation, defined by Wikipedia as the process of separating the component substances of a liquid mixture of two or more chemically discrete substances. When Friar Lawrence gives Juliet the potion he refers to as distilling liquor, it then causes a fictional death, or the appearance of death, representing the dead entity that only the incorporating chemist can reanimate. His ability to reanimate Juliet is very similar to the power of Mary Shelley's Dr. Frankenstein. And it's at this very same time in history, when legal minds are formulating the concept of corporate names, that Juliet famously asked the sky above her back garden, "What's in a name?" Before we can look at the possible answers to that question, we need to notice that the names in the play have very specific meanings themselves. Romeo's last name, Montague, literally Mont and Ague, means mountain rising or pointed hill. If his first name seems reminiscent of Rome, it's likely not a coincidence. The name Capulet can be broken into cap, meaning head or ruler, and Eulet, meaning either a peevish or lonely person. Someone lonely is single, just one, and a single cap could easily refer to the single capstone of a pyramid, also a pointed hill. Curiously, cap can also refer to a headland, the very same word Agatha Christie used to describe the ascending hill of the monument where Miss Temple was killed. And it's in the Capulet monument that Juliet is laid to rest, even before she's dead. In fact, both Nemesis and Romeo and Juliet involve deaths that occur at a monument. Juliet is laid low, but inside her family's vault. And vault means high. A mausoleum or vault is a tomb that is elevated, just as the monument in Nemesis sits on top of a hill or a Montague. So to answer Juliet's question, one of the first things we're seeing in a name is a reflection of the land itself. And while Montague and Capulet mean hill, Emlyn and Shelley both mean valley. Of course, Juliet's question, "What's in a name?" is rhetorical, and she goes on to answer it for herself. That which we call a rose by any other word would smell as sweet. So Romeo would, were he not Romeo called, retain that dear perfection which he owes without that title Romeo. And it's here that we see the play isn't really about love at all. It's about, unfortunately, land ownership and inheritance, and how the wrong name, like Montague, can prevent the legal possession of land. Our first clue that the play is about the transfer of land is in this line: retain that dear perfection which he owes without that title Romeo. It's usually misinterpreted to mean that even if Romeo had some other name, he'd still be perfect. But the monetary term owes suggests a very different meaning here, referring to the concept of legal perfection, defined by Wikipedia as the additional steps taken in relation to a security interest. In the 16th century, perfection as a legal term meant completion, as perfectio is completion in Latin. But Francis Bacon used the term more specifically in his Elements of the Common Laws of England. As if I covenant with my son to stand sized unto his use of the lands which I shall afterwards purchase, yet the use is void, and the reason is, because there is no new act, nor transmutation of possession following to perfect this inception. Here, Bacon's use of the verb perfect corresponds to Wikipedia's definition of additional actions taken after the first action, the inception. Legal perfection, even today, can be expressed through various additional actions, but the two most common are retaining title or taking possession. And both methods are mentioned right here in Romeo and Juliet, with 4 words correlating to the Wikipedia definition: perfection, retain, title, and later possession in Act 3, Scene 2. Ultimately, Romeo is a debtor who owes this perfection or interest security to his creditor, Juliet's father. And we know it's Capulet because Romeo tells us, "Is she a Capulet? O dear account, my life is my foe's debt." But if you still doubt that this is a play about land ownership, let me present some more evidence that Juliet's wedding, even in her lovesick mind, is primarily about the inheritance of land. First of all, Juliet is encouraged by her father to marry the count known as Paris. And at the party at the Capulet estate, when her father is talking with Paris, he even describes his daughter in terms of soil. She is the hopeful lady of my earth. Then foreshadows the marriage he wants between them by promising an inheritance of land. Even such delight among fresh fennel buds shall you this night inherit at my house. Later we'll see that while Paris is promised inheritance, Romeo can only talk of purchase. Oddly, the title of Paris here isn't Count. Instead, he's referred to as County Paris, and at one point her nurse tells Juliet, "Since the case so stands as now it doth, I think it best you married with the county." This is the only play in the first folio to refer to counts, both Paris and Anselm, as counties, which are territorial divisions of land. The normal convention used everywhere else in the first folio is that of Count Milan in King John, Count Claudio in Much Ado About Nothing, and the Count of Roussillon in All's Well That Ends Well. This break with convention suggests that it's wordplay regarding the field counts taken for taxation at the Exchequer, all based on the production of the land. With this in mind, the nurse's advice for Juliet is to literally marry the land. When Juliet falls in love with Romeo but discovers he belongs to the rival house of Montague, she uses a specifically legal phrase describing her love for Romeo as a prodigious birth. In Black's Law Dictionary, this phrase describes a legal monster, someone prohibited from inheriting land. If Juliet marries this enemy of the family, she'll likely lose her inheritance as well. And now we come to the play's use of the word demesne. Shakespeare doesn't use this term often, only in Romeo and Juliet and Cymbeline. We encountered the word demesne earlier when we looked at the gavelkind and primogeniture customs of handling land inheritance. It's a law French term meaning the feudal lord's land, but it later evolved into the word domain, or the land attached to a manor house or mansion. In Act 2, Scene 1, Mercutio gives a salacious reference to Rosaline, the girl Romeo had previously loved, describing her quivering thigh and the demesnes that there adjacent lie, likening her crotch to a plot of feudal land. The word demesnes is also used by Capulet in Act 3, Scene 5, where he vents his frustration that his attempts to marry Juliet to Paris have been thwarted. Still my care hath been to have her matched, and having now provided a gentleman of noble parentage of fair demesnes. Beyond all that is the play's repeating metaphor of mansions and homes. First, Juliet likens her love for Romeo to a house. Oh, I have bought the mansion of a love, but not possessed it, and though I am sold, not yet enjoyed. This is a direct allusion to the legal device of a use discussed by Francis Bacon in his reading and analysis of the Statute of Uses of 1536. The device separates the ownership title, here being taken by Juliet, from the occupation or benefit of the land held by some other beneficiary, as sestque use, or he who has use. The feud between the two families is framed as a feud between the two houses of Montague and Capulet. In fact, Mercutio's death is prefaced by his agonized cry of a plague a both your houses. But more than that, the feud between Montague and Capulet is linguistically related back to feudalism, the rigid laws of land transfer, including primogeniture. Even more important is the next housing metaphor used in Act 3, Scene 3, when Romeo uses the term mansion to ask where his name is placed. As if that name, shot from the deadly level of a gun, did murder her. Oh, tell me, friar, tell me, in what vile part of this anatomy doth my name lodge? Tell me that I may sack the hateful mansion. One might even think the author of this play could have had knowledge of the legal arguments regarding corporate name and place that took place just a few years before Romeo and Juliet was written. Someone like Francis Bacon. Romeo's banishment from Verona is the use of city limits, metes and bounds, as a negative prison. In Act 3, Scene 2, Juliet then speaks of both Romeo's banishment and her own grief in terms of metes and bounds. Romeo is banished. There is no end, no limit, measure, bound in that word's death. And just as words of limitation were legal descriptors of the land as a state, Juliet's line is a complex play on words regarding the land that Romeo can't, in his banishment, inherit or purchase. This legal terminology tells us not only that the play was written by a legal mind, but that the play itself is commentary on property law, culminating in this wordplay between Benvolio and Mercutio in Act 3, Scene 1. And I were so apt to quarrel as thou art, any man should buy the fee simple of my life for an hour and a quarter. The fee simple, oh, simple. A fee simple interest in land denotes absolute ownership that lasts forever, which is why Benvolio's joke is funny. Any fee simple interest in the life of such a quarreling, sword-wielding man would last only a little over an hour. This isn't just a legal joke, it's a real estate joke. And consider this line from the prince: I will be deaf to pleading and excuses, nor tears nor prayers shall purchase out abuses. He's banishing Romeo from Verona, his homeland, and announces poetically that he'll pass this judgment without court pleadings. That judgment of banishment is defined by the parameters of place, the city limits of Verona. And finally, while Juliet lies in a fictional death, Capulet personifies death in the role of her husband, showing that maneuvering the inheritance was the only motive for marriage in his mind. Death is my son-in-law, death is my heir. It's death that will inherit the Capulet estate. I'm grateful for any feedback. Please leave your thoughts in the comments, and thank you for watching.